Senator Sessions, there's been a lot of controversy about refugees. The United States had a dubious record on refugees during World War II, refusing to accept Jewish refugees who were then, in some cases, returned to Europe and the Holocaust and perished. After World War II, a new policy emerged in the United States, a bipartisan policy, and the United States became more open, in some cases generous, to accepting refugees. The numbers, I've heard various numbers, but 650,000 Cuban refugees who came to the United States during the ascendancy of the Castro regime. 125,000 or more Soviet Jews accepted in the United States, spared from persecution in the Soviet Union. 400,000 from Eastern Europe after World War II, 400,000 from Vietnam, 150,000 from the former Yugoslavia. In the audience today is Omar al-Muqdad. I don't know if he could please stand here. Mr. Muqdad is a Syrian refugee. His story is a story of a journalist who for more than a decade publicized human rights abuses by the Assad regime, arrested 7 times, imprisoned for 2 years. When he refused to stop writing after that, the prison guards broke his hands. After his release from prison, he continued to write about the abuses of the Syrian security forces. When he was again pursued by the regime, he fled to Turkey. He was resettled in the United States by Catholic Charities after receiving refugee status. There have been some strong words spoken about Syrian refugees. In fact, during the course of the campaign, there were some who said we should accept none, and many who've questioned whether we should accept any refugees from anywhere. Despite the lengthy vetting process and background checks, some have said no refugees, we're finished with that business. One of your responsibilities as Attorney General will be the involvement of prosecutorial discretion, decisions that have to be made about the fate of men like Alton Mills I introduced earlier, who had served 22 years of a life sentence for the possession of crack cocaine. Cases of Oscar Vasquez, a man who was a dreamer and wanted to serve the United States in uniform. And this case involving Omar al-Muqdad. The American Bar Association standards say the duty of a prosecutor is to seek justice, not merely to convict. It is an important function of the prosecutor to seek to reform and improve the administration of criminal justice. When it comes to cases like these, in your role as the leading prosecutor in the United States of America, what is your feeling about your discretion to make the decision as to whether or not to spare individuals like those I've described?
I've been made aware in the last several years how this process works. It's really the Secretary of State, usually through consultation with the President, that decides how many refugees should be admitted to the country. And there's little Congress can do other than get into a funding argument with the President about that. So Secretary Kerry met with members of the Judiciary Committee to announce what he planned to do on refugees. That will be how it would be decided, and legally the President appears to have that power, but it would be my responsibility, I think, to make sure that it was exercised within the bounds of law.
But you have a responsibility too. You oversee the Office of the Pardon Attorney, which recommends that sentences like those of Alton Mills be commuted. You oversee the immigration courts, which are responsible for interpreting how our nation's immigration laws apply to dreamers and refugees like Mr. Muqdad. So this isn't another agency, it is the Department of Justice, and you will be the leader of that department. You will have the authority and prosecutorial discretion. You can't point to Congress and you can't point to the State Department. There's a responsibility within your own department.
Well, a refugee is admitted or not admitted to the United States on the approval or disapproval by the Secretary of State and its consular officials. It's not a trial or not a litigation. So that's how that would be determined. The gentleman from Syria that you mentioned should have be able to make a strong case for his acceptance as a refugee because he's been damaged and injured and attacked and at risk for his writings. So that would give him a more, proving that should give them, put him at a higher level of potential acceptance.
Well, you and I can disagree on this one point in your authority over immigration courts as Attorney General, but I hope that we both agree that there are compelling cases of people who are victims around the world of terrorism and war, discrimination and maltreatment, men and women. And many of them look to the United States as the last possible place for them to find safety and security. I hope after the heated language of this last election campaign that we can come back to some of the standards that have guided this nation since World War II.
Well, we'll not end the refugee program. I would not favor that, but we do have a responsibility to be careful and make sure those who are admitted have been properly vetted and are not a danger.
Thank you.